What's up, everyone, and welcome to Scourge of War Waterloo, Episode 3. And today we're going to be taking a look at the brigade scenario, the Hunters. This is the same scenario we just played in Episode 2, The Emperor's Plan. Only this time we're going to be playing it from the perspective of the Allies in the woods. Um, and instead of attacking the woods with the French, we're going to be trying to hold the woods with the Allies. And we're basically going to turn the tables on the French by, if you recall, in the last episode, we basically send the Allies packing very quickly by abusing the power of skirmishers. And today, we're going to use that same trick to basically stop the French in their tracks by basically having all our units. We're going to basically put them all in skirmish formation and uh, pull a little engagement distance trick by moving our units kind of forward uh, to near the edge of the woods and forcing the French to engage us while outside of the woods. That's going to do two things. Um, First, it's going to stop the French from being able to move close enough to the objective to contest it. When two sides are both in range of the objective, they both have the right amount of troops near it, in range of it, and they both have a leader present. The objective is contested, which basically means neither side gets the benefit of occupying the objective. So, in order for one side or the other to actually gain control of the objective, they have to drive the other side um, far enough away from the objective that only they have sole possession of it. Now, in this scenario, we only have a small number of troops. It's less than 1,000 men, and they're all split up into kind of little company-sized, units. So they're not really much of an offensive force. If we let the French contest the objective, we're not going to get it back because we don't really have the ability to mount any kind of counter-offensive against, you know, it's Bowden's brigade that we're facing, the same brigade we commanded in the last episode. It's an entire French brigade, and we're just a couple of little company detachments. So we don't really have any kind of offensive option um, against a force of that size. There's no way we can attack uh, a full brigade and expect to have any success. They'll kill us. So we have to play purely defensively. And what we have to do to maintain the objective is actually move forward of it and kind of move our units to near the edge of the woods. We don't want to move them out of the woods because then we'll lose that all important defensive terrain bonus for being in the woods, which brings up the second reason moving your troops forward is the best option in the scenario, and that is you're going to force the French to deploy and engage us while they are still outside of the woods. Um, so they will not get the defensive terrain bonus because they will be out in the open while we will still be, hiding in the woods, in skirmish formation behind, picking them off behind trees and so forth. We'll have the defensive terrain bonus, but they won't. Um, and of course, because skirmishers are harder to hit, we're going to inflict more casualties on them than they will on us. That being said, um, there is a certain amount of luck to playing the scenario. There's a certain amount of skill to it too, and the skill is largely knowing to move your units forward, uh, to make sure you cover the objective, and to make sure you force the French to deploy further out in the open, um, and to keep a certain amount of reserves. Our units are going to be fired upon basically throughout this whole scenario. So they're not the greatest troops. They're not awful, but they're not great either. So we want to keep some reserves to plug up holes if some of our units break and run. Um, and that's kind of the skill aspect of it. The luck aspect of it is, and this is different every time you play the scenario because just the AI won't always do the same thing twice, and I've never really played a scenario and had it just be an exact copy of a previous playthrough. There's always something different, and the luck aspect of it is how aggressive the AI decides to be in pushing home its attack. What you want them to do is basically deploy into line and try and shoot it out with us. That's our best hope of what will happen, because if they do that, we're always going to get the better of it, because we are in skirmish formation in the woods with the defensive terrain bonus, and they're going to be in line, um, outside the woods in the open. The AI will never deploy and abuse skirmishers the way I do. Uh, you may see them, detach a few skirmishers, but they're not going to abuse them. The AI will never abuse them the way I do. So we don't have to worry about them coming at us the way we attacked as the French in episode 1, because the AI just doesn't do that. It uses skirmishers more in a historical way, and I use it in a way where I'm abusing a game mechanic of basically how they function within the game. So we use the AI, and I use skirmishers completely differently. So we don't have to worry about them coming at us with skirmishers, and shooting us down the way we used skirmishers in episode 1, because the AI just doesn't do that. So you don't have to worry about that. What you do have to worry about is if the AI decides it's not going to stand there and shoot with us. Um, and instead they're going to move their brigade in inside the woods, come at us in assault column, and basically just by brute force move us out of there. Now they'll take more casualties than we do when they do that. They're not really going to inflict any casualties, because we're just a bunch of small units in skirmish formation. We're just going to run. Um, but that still makes the scenario harder to win, because it's very easy, if the French decide to play very aggressively, to just run you off the objective. And as I said, because our units are small, we have no counter-offensive ability against a full French brigade. We lose the objective, we've lost it. Our only alternative is then to fall back into Hougomont and start getting points from that objective. However, Hougomont is worth half the amount of points of the objective in the woods. The objective in the woods is worth 100 points per minute, and the objective in Hougomont is only worth 50 points a minute. So we want to try to hold the woods as long as possible. Now, in this playthrough, it really went my way. The French kind of did exactly what I wanted them to do. That won't always be the case. So, I kind of will cover what you need to do in situations where the French play. The AI is just a little more aggressive than they are in this particular playthrough. So let's get started in the video here. And the general in command, Sir Arthur Wellesley, has ordered the garrisoning of 3 farms along the Allied line: Hougomont on the right, La Hassante on the center, and Papelotte on the left. You have just been made overall garrison commander of Hougomont. Your troops are made up of various detachments of Dutch Jaegers, German Nassau companies, and your own Coldstream Guard. So basically, we have a kind of loose assortment of companies in the woods here that we control. And we have to hold off the French with that. We need 1,500 points for a major victory. Uh, we want to get at least half of that from that woods objective. So we want to be able to hold the woods for at least 10 to 15 minutes of the scenario. It's only a 30-minute scenario. So at least, half of that we kind of want to get by holding the woods. So I'm going to go over at the beginning of the scenario the best kind of strategies that I use to make that happen, and at the very least, delay the French as long as possible from overtaking our position. Now, I'll tell you right now, because this is an old video and I'm just uploading commentary on it. That didn't happen here. We held the French in the woods the entire time because they were not very aggressive. So this is our leader, Colonel James MacDonald, and you can see it says, "You are ordered to hold the woods south of Hougomont. If you are overwhelmed, you may take shelter in the farm buildings." That's Hougomont they're referring to, the farm buildings. "But fall back to the farm only if your situation becomes critical." So your orders right off the bat here are telling you that you should try to hold the woods as long as possible. And so that's what we're going to try to do. Now, you'll notice we have a small group of units right here, and I'm immediately going to start moving them forward and putting them, you'll see clicking on the formation and switching everybody to a skirmish formation rather than these line formations. You can see that bottom right-hand corner there is the skirmish formation of the formation menu. And what I'm doing is I'm moving them forward in front of the objective. The objective is this little star on the ground, like we covered in Emperor's Plan. And the reason I'm doing that is so that when the French come to within musket range, which in this game is 150 yards, which is ridiculous for smoothbore muskets, they were not effective at that kind of range. It should be more 80 to 100 yards. But regardless, it's 150 yards. So we're moving our units forward about 50 to 75 yards. And we have some units near Hougomont. We're going to leave a couple of units in Hougomont, but most of our force we're going to actually consolidate to a line inside these woods here. And we basically want to set them up in a skirmish line kind of near the edge of the woods so that they get the defensive terrain bonus and force the French to engage much further out than we did when we played as the French in episode 1. We were able to move right into the woods because the Allies just stood where they are initially. We're not going to do that. We're going to move forward so that they have to deploy further out, away from the objective. Because as I said, if they move close enough to the objective to contest it, we're never going to get it back. We can't form any kind of offense against a French force of this size. They vastly outnumber us. So, we're kind of playing this as a stall tactic here. We're just trying to trip them up on the approach and slow everything down here. So this objective is just like in Emperor's Plan. It's worth 100 points per minute, and it's a range of 100 yards, and you need 100 men and a leader to occupy it, just like in Emperor's Plan. The only difference here is instead of needing 1,000 points to get a major victory, like in the Emperor's Plan, we need 1,500 points. And the reason for the higher point total is simply because you start out in possession of the objective and are immediately getting points from it, whereas the French actually had to attack to acquire the objective. So the main reason we need 1,500 points and to get a major victory in this scenario, as opposed to the 1,000 that you needed as the French, is just for that reason, because we already start off in control of the objective and we're immediately acquiring points from it. So you can see the French, they do have the 3 skirmisher units that the scenario automatically deployed for us at the beginning of episode 1. It does deploy those skirmisher units for them as well. So they do have 3 skirmisher units out there. And the French skirmisher units are of generally better quality than our skirmisher units. If they were to stand there shooting at each other under equal conditions, they would do better than we. The French are generally better in loose order formations like this. However, we have an advantage, and that is that we are in the woods and they are in the open. So we're getting the defensive terrain bonus and they're not. And that's kind of going to even the odds for us a little bit. And it's one of the reasons we move these units forward, because we're making the French engage us from further out. They're basically in the open without the defensive terrain bonus, and we have the defensive terrain bonus. And it also has the double benefit of making the French engage us from much further away from the objective. So they would actually have to drive us off to actually come within range to occupy the objective. So we have a much better shot of stopping the French from being able to contest the objective with this setup right here. So we're in skirmish formation, we're using the power of skirmishers when it comes to shooting at line units, and we're in the woods ahead of the objective. This is basically what you want to do. Now what happens next is largely a matter of what the AI does as far as how it carries out the French attack. In this playthrough, it was rather timid. It was content to basically stand out there in the open and shoot with us, and it wasn't that hard. It doesn't always do that. It may it may try to be more aggressive and come in with units in assault column and just charge through your, thin line here of nothing but skirmishers. And, if the AI chooses to do that, you really can't stop them. You just don't have the manpower to do it. You only have a couple of small little units here in skirmish formation. And in that case, if you keep an eye on the objective, and you remember I told you to look at the icon in the sky, as long as it has the Allied colors, you have possession of the objective. If the French ever move to within distance where they contest the objective, you'll know because you won't be getting points from it anymore. You won't see the timer when you click on the leader, and you won't see your colors in the wreath above the icon, above the objective, the icon in the sky. It will just be that silver wreath. If that happens, you have to just give up the woods. There's no point in trying to hold them, and you have to withdraw all your men into Hougomont. And you'll at least begin gaining points from the Hougomont objective, which is worth 50 points per minute. The scenario is still winnable if you have to fall back into Hougomont. The real thing you want to do is to be able to hold the objective for at least 10 to 15 minutes. If you hold the objective for 10 minutes, you're going to get 1,000 points, and probably a little more because you're going to inflict more casualties than you take, generally speaking, with skirmishers. We're already up to 654 points in only a few minutes of play. So if you can get at least 1,000 points in the first 10 minutes of the scenario, you can fall back into Hougomont if the French get too aggressive. Now, the Hougomont objective doesn't actually activate until 15 minutes into the scenario. So you can see the time over here. It's 11:36. So the scenario starts at 11:30. So at 11:45, the objective for Hougomont would activate, and at that point, you begin getting points from there. In order to actually move units into the fort, all you have to do is select the unit and then click on the center of the fort. And they'll just, it's a visual abstraction. I know it looks silly, but they don't actually walk through doors or anything. They kind of just walk through the walls, And like I said, it's just a visual abstraction of representing that the units are, now retreating into the fort. And, the game just shows it as the units walking through the walls. I know it looks silly, but, it's a lot less about the graphical representation of what's happening than it is just understanding what it is that's going on. And the units are just withdrawing into Hougomont, and that's just how the game shows it happening. They aren't actually walking through walls. It's just an abstraction, a visual metaphor, so to speak. A lot of people complain about the walking through the walls like it's, somehow they're actually walking through walls in the fort, and they don't understand that it's just the way the game shows it. The units withdrawing into the fort. It's not that the units are actually physically men walking through walls. It's just a visual abstraction. So, when you see that and it looks a little weird, don't worry about it. It's, the men are, they're not walking through walls. It's just how the game shows it happening. So anyway, right now things are proceeding exactly as I hope it does when I set this up. The French are completely out of the woods, and they're engaging us in line formation, and we are in the woods in skirmish formation, kind of hiding behind trees, and we're getting the defensive terrain bonus, and we still have the objective, and you can see this French bodies just piling up out there. They're hitting us too. You can see a man here, down there, and a man down here, but they are not hitting us. They are not hitting us the way we are hitting them. And I'm bringing my last British Guard unit out of the fort. I had originally put them in there, but at this point I realize the French are kind of doing what I want them to do, and they're mostly shooting it out with us as opposed to trying to charge in. So I want my best troops on the line, and these two British Guard units are level 7 veteran troops. You can see the troop quality right down here, 7 veteran. Now, outside of the French Imperial Guard, not including those troops, these British Foot Guards are the best troops in the game. They are the highest, they have the highest troop 7 veteran. Most troops in the game are like 4 volunteer, 5 regular, 6 or 5 might be I think 6 is regular and 5 is militia, something like that. I have to click on one. I don't actually remember what is what. But these guys right here, these are level 7 veteran. Very high troop quality. And we want them anchoring our line because they are the least likely to break and run. Because they're, when you have a higher troop quality, your combat ability is better, your morale's better, your fatigue is better, kind of everything is better about them. And at a troop quality that high, 7 veteran, it's a very high troop quality. They are cracked troops. The only troops in the game higher than, these foot guards are the French Imperial Guard, kind of the old guard. They are level 8 elite troops, and they are the only troops in the game that are level 8 elite. They are the only ones with troop quality that high. And in game terms, they are like Supermen. The Imperial Guard is just the absolute best troops in the game. They're like Delta Force and Navy SEALs all rolled into one. Absolutely elite crack troops. But they're not in this scenario. Only these companies of foot guards are. And so for all intent purposes in this scenario, those troops are the best troops that we have. So that's why we want them kind of right in the thick of this, because they are the least likely to break and run. And they don't. They will not break. So that's why we have them out there. Everything else is going pretty well here. The French are trying to push forward. They are still not in the woods. The forwardmost unit is kind of just on the other side of the hedge. And they're coming under tremendous fire from our skirmishers in the woods. And if this kind of thing ends up happening for you, where, the French are not super aggressive. These are my reserves right here. I'm just making sure I have units placed kind of behind the line so that if certain militia units break and run as they are wont to do, being, low quality troops, I can plug the line. Because this isn't a very long scenario, so I'll even plug the line with more low quality troops. They don't need to stand there for that long. Okay, level 5 troops are seasoned. Okay, and then level 6 is regular. So 4 is volunteer, 5 is seasoned, 6 is regular, 7 is veteran, and 8 is elite. There's nothing lower than that in the game. If you go to some of the Civil War games, they go even lower. Like level 1 troops are like conscript troops, and they are absolutely worthless. But generally speaking, troops in the Napoleonic era, on all sides, French, British, Austrian, Prussian, generally speaking, they are of better troop quality than, troops in the American Civil War were at the beginning of the war. So I think level 4 volunteer is about the lowest troop quality you'll find in any of these Waterloo scenarios. Whereas in Civil War games, you'll certainly find much lower than that. But most troops are generally 5, 6, level 5 and level 6. Certain guard units are level 7, and like I said, the French Imperial Guard, who are the absolute best troops in the game, are level 8. So we're doing pretty good here. You can see lots of bodies on the ground in front of us. We're just shooting them up. We're taking a few casualties of our own, but we're certainly getting the best of it. We're certainly killing way more of the French than they are of us. And they're not making too aggressive of a move here to try and push us off this position. They are, deployed in line and trying to shoot at us, as opposed to coming in here and assault column and charging us. And we much rather would want this situation where they're just content to shoot us, because it's much better for us. If they come in here and assault column, we just have to run. There's no two ways about it. And I have had that happen to me when in playing the scenario. And as I said, the scenario is totally winnable, even if that happens. Just fall back into Hougomont, and you'll start getting points from Hougomont. And if you fall back into Hougomont, the French will pursue and try and attack the fort. Remember how I said not to do that in episode 1? Yeah, but if you fall back into Hougomont in this scenario, the French will pursue an attack, and you're going to get a lot more casualties because the fort is heavily defended. You're going to fall back in there with all your troops. You're going to get reinforcements, and you're going to inflict a lot more casualties on the French because you're in a fort, which is a highly defensive individual. So as you can see, we're 15 minutes into the scenario, and we have 1,600 points. We've already got enough for a major victory. We just have to hold on now. So, you know, if you can hold these woods for at least 10 to 15 minutes, inflicting more casualties on the French than they are on you, you know, you can basically win the scenario just within the first 15 minutes. And then if the French decide to get too aggressive or they contest the objective, you could pull back into Hougomont, and you'll still be able to acquire even more points, and you'll be in an even better defensive position. The reason I hold on to the woods is because I can. The French just aren't pushing that hard, and the woods objective is just worth more. It's 100 points per minute, and Hougomont is only worth 50 points per minute. So as long as the French aren't really pushing their luck here, and are content to just kind of stand here and shoot, I'm going to keep holding the woods because I'm doing great. And once you have this all set up, you see me, you know, randomly clicking units, and what I'm basically doing is just maintenance. I'm just clicking on each unit, I'm checking their fatigue, their morale, checking to see that they're inflicting more casualties than they're taking, and in all instances, they pretty much are. And, you know, just keeping an eye on things and making sure that we're getting the best of it, you know, kind of at all points on the line. You can see this unit has inflicted 66 casualties and they've only taken 8 casualties. You know, so they're doing fine. And you really want to keep an eye on morale more so than fatigue. Fatigue plays a factor when you're trying to be offensive. It's not such a big deal when you're just trying to hold your position and defend. Lower morale is what will cause your troops to break more than fatigue. Fatigue can cause them to break if they get charged, but, you know, just dropping their guns and running kind of while they're holding the ground is largely a matter of morale. And because all our units are in skirmish formation and are generally getting better of it, their morale is holding up pretty good. Even on some of the lower quality troops, you know, our morale is not really taking a hit because we're doing so well. But it's still something you always want to keep an eye on, and you know, kind of make sure that something doesn't happen where all of a sudden your troops are getting, you know, hit more than they're, you know, actually inflicting casualties themselves. You know, whether the French, you know, move and, you know, kind of move onto your flank or something, or, you know, whatever could possibly turn the tide in the French, you know, in the French favor. Nothing like that really happens here. They pretty much just stand here and get shot at. And you can see the forward unit there is withdrawing. They're not routed, but they've just decided in the meantime that they have lost as many men as their orders required them to, so to speak. And they're pulling back now. And you can see the French leader standing there going, "What? I thought we were having fun. What happened?" So now he's got to run off and rally those troops. And in the meantime, we're going to keep shooting at these guys here who are still standing and shooting. And that's pretty much all there is to this scenario. The key points you have to remember at the beginning of the scenario is the most important thing is to change all your units into a skirmish formation. Because as I've already said, skirmishes are better. And, you know, if you watched, you know, the earlier videos, you know why. And to advance them in front of the objective, kind of to near the edge of the woods like this. You know, you don't want them out of the woods, because then you're losing the defensive terrain bonus. But just kind of to the edge of the woods so that the French enter musket range before they reach the woods. That way they're forced to stop advancing and go online and start shooting with you while they're outside of the woods. This way you have the defensive terrain bonus and they don't. Those are probably the two key most important things to And always just keep an eye on the objective and make sure you have it covered. If you move your troops too far forward and you no longer have enough men in range of the objective, just take some of your reserve units and move them onto the objective so that you have enough troops covered. It's 100 yards. It's a decent size radius for the objective. You don't need them to be like right on top of it. Just kind of in range of the radius, which I think is around 100 yards. And that's pretty much it. The rest of this is really dependent on how aggressive the French play. And that's not really in your control. The AI controls the enemy, and they're going to decide how aggressive they want to play. And I've seen them do all sorts of things. I've seen them come in, bayonets at the ready and just charge everybody out of there. And I've seen them do this, where they just stand here kind of shooting at you, and it just never kind of works out for them. But no matter what they do, the scenario is always winnable. Even if they decide they want to come in here and charge you guys out of there, you're still going to inflict a lot of casualties as they're organizing that attack, because you're going to be poking at them with these skirmishes. And while they're organizing that attack, you'll have control of the objective and be gaining points for it. And no matter what the AI decides to do, you should be able to hold this objective for at least 10 minutes. And if you do, that's at least 1,000 points right there, because it's 100 points a minute. 10 minutes will be 1,000 points. So you're already pretty close to the 1,500 points you need for a major victory if you can just hold these woods for 10 minutes. And then you can pull back into the fort at 11:45. The Hougomont objective will activate, and you'll start getting 50 points a minute from that objective. And another 10 minutes would be another 500 points, and that would pretty much give you 1,500 points right there. You just want to always make sure that you're not in a position where you're going to take a lot of casualties, which is why we transform all these units into a skirmish formation, so that they always inflict more casualties than they take. Because the more casualties you inflict, the more points you get. But the more casualties you take, you lose points. So, you want to inflict obviously more than you take, so that you have a positive score. Because if you are taking more casualties than you're inflicting, that's going to give you a negative score, because casualties and that you inflict and casualties that you take are all worth positive and negative points. You'll gain points for inflicting casualties, you'll lose points for taking casualties. So very simple. You just want to have to keep a positive score. So that's pretty much it. We're doing fine here. Look at all these bodies in front of us. This is, power of skirmishing. That's why I say they are abusable and very close to what I would say being a broken mechanic in the game. They had to give you, I understand it, the developers had to give you a reason to want to use skirmishers. There had to be some advantage to using them, because obviously they were used heavily in Napoleonic warfare, but how do you represent that in a game? How do you make their usefulness apply in a video game? And their answer was to make them harder to hit. They're generally in confrontation with a regular line unit. A skirmisher unit is going to inflict more casualties on the line unit than they'll take from the line unit. And that's the advantage of using skirmishers. The problem with that is once you understand that, it becomes abusable. Where there's lots of scenarios where skirmishers don't have to worry about the things that historically skirmishers had to worry about, like cavalry, which skirmishers have no defense against. There's no cavalry in this scenario. Other enemy skirmisher units. Like I said, the AI does not abuse skirmishers the way I do. So even if there's a few skirmisher units that the AI does deploy, it's not like it never uses skirmishers, but it doesn't abuse them the way I do. So, we're still going to have the advantage because we're using all skirmishers. So that's basically what becomes the issue, is that once you understand how skirmishers work and that they're harder to hit, they become very abusable. in a lot of the scenarios. And you're able to get almost an unfair advantage because, the AI is trying to play as, following a historical kind of script that the author of the scenario wrote for it. And we're abusing game mechanics because we know skirmishers are much harder to hit, so we're using all skirmishing units in this shootout here. And that's why, we're inflicting so many more casualties than we're taking. But, I've said in other videos, I don't really treat this game like it's some sort of, super authentic simulation of Napoleonic warfare. There are ways to play the game that do an excellent job of simulating, the command structure of Napoleonic warfare and what it's actually like to be in command of Napoleonic units and being a commander and letting the AI handle a lot of your troops, and you're kind of just broadly outlining the strokes of what you want to happen. And the AI is, dealing with the details. But we're not doing that here. I play it more like a video game, and I've, in the process of just years of playing this game, I've discovered a lot of the mechanics of the game, a lot of things I can exploit, a lot of sort of abusable tactics that just kind of work on the AI over and over again. I've said before, the AI never gets any smarter. It just knows what it knows. That's not to say the AI isn't good. I've said many times, I think the AI in this game is excellent. But like all AIs, they only know what they know, and they can't learn and adapt like a human can. And, it doesn't learn from its mistakes the way a human does. This is obviously not the first time I've played this scenario. I've played it many, many times. And the first couple of times I played it, I got my ass kicked because I didn't know what I was doing. It's only through playing it over and over again and experience playing the game and learning about the game's mechanics, that I'm now at the point where I can play all these scenarios and, make them look pretty easy because I have so much experience at beating the AI. While the AI is basically the same as, the first day I fought, and it kicked my butt. It hasn't gotten any smarter. I have, or I should say, I've learned about the game more, and I've developed tactics and strategies to beat the AI. And this is one of them. Using skirmishers, moving forward so the French can't move into the woods and contest the objective, and it's basically worked out pretty good. We shot up these units pretty good. Lots of French bodies on the ground. Our men are starting to get a little tired, but the morale is still pretty high. You can see one of these French units, you can kind of see at the top of the screen here through the woods. They have kind of moved off onto our left flank here. And I don't really think they're making any kind of serious attempt to get around my left flank, but I am going to kind of turn one of my units to face them. Just to absolutely make sure that the French don't try and move around my left flank here. And I'm kind of trying to place them right by these big tree here. Good source of cover. So we've only got about 2 minutes now left in this scenario. We've managed to hold the woods the entire time. The French kind of fell exactly into my line of thinking, into kind of getting them to do exactly what I wanted them to do. And you can see we've amassed a huge amount of points here. We're 3,300 points now. Twice as many as we needed for a major victory. And that's just because we were able to hold the woods for the entire time. But, you don't need 3,300 points for a major victory. You only need 1,500 points. So, if it doesn't go quite as smoothly as it did here for you, and I don't expect it will the first couple of times you play the scenario, you'll be much better armed now in terms of, what your strategy should be. But, it's still going to take some playthroughs and some experience for you to really, really get the hang of this. So even if, like I said, even if you end the game in the scenario with 1,600 points and had to fall back into Hougomont, a win is a win in my book. You know. However you manage to get over that 1,500 point mark is how you manage to get over it. A major victory is a major victory. There's nothing above major victory. It's not like if you get 6,000 points in this scenario, you're somehow going to get like ultimate victory. There is no ultimate. It's just major victory. It's the highest you can get. So whether you get it with 1,600 points or you get it with 3,500 points, it makes no difference. It's still the same. So. In this instance, we were able to hold the woods for the entire time, and that's why we were able to rack up a huge point total. But if the French were more aggressive and they charged us out of the woods, I would have just fallen back into Hougomont and occupied that objective, and we might have ended up with something like 2,100, 2,200 points, but still would have won. Still counts. But this is the way it turned out, and I think the scenario is just about over here. Like 3 more seconds here, we're gonna get the screen, and there it is. So we inflicted 110 casualties, and we took 110 casualties and inflicted 600 casualties. So it wasn't that huge a fight in terms of casualties. Most of our points came from the objective, which is the case in a lot of these scenarios. The objectives, as I've said, are the heart and soul of how to win most of these scenarios. So that's pretty much it for this scenario. And the next one will be Papillote, which is a French brigade assault on a fort on the French right, kind of the opposite side of the battlefield from where we've been playing. Hougomont is on the French left, and now we're going to kind of travel across the battlefield to the French right and attack the Allied position at Papillote. So that will be next. So that's it for now. Take it easy, guys.